Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The United Conservatives have announced that Jason Kenney will remain on as Premier. That is until a new leader is chosen. The Trudeau Liberals are looking at implementing a new wealth tax. According to the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, it will impact almost every Canadian. And a documentary is being produced on the Freedom Convoy. We hear from the producers of the film and what message they're trying to bring.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Well, it turns out that Jason Kenney will remain on as Alberta Premier for now. UCP Caucus Chair Nathan Neudorf says Kenney will stay on until a new leader for the party is found. In a statement, MLA Neudorf had this to say: "The United Conservative Caucus had a vigorous discussion and debate about the future of our party and government. In that spirit, we have affirmed Premier Jason Kenney's continued leadership of our caucus and government until such time as a new leader is chosen, the timing of which will be determined by the United Conservative Party." Kenney announced that he was stepping down as party leader after only receiving 51.4% support from party members during the recent UCP leadership review. There are some who believe that Jason Kenney should step down right now and that an interim leader be put into place. Fort McMurray-Laclabish MLA Brian Jean, who's gunning for the leadership, says it's parliamentary tradition for Kenney to step aside immediately. Independent Cypress Medicine Hat MLA Drew Barnes agrees.
It's clear that Jason Kenney cannot unite Conservatives in Alberta. He so has not met expectations. We're only a year away from the next provincial election. The polls are consistently showing Rachel Notley and the NDP way ahead of Jason Kenney. So whoever the new leader is, the new direction, needs time to unite Conservatives, needs time to get ready to defeat Notley and work for economic freedom in Alberta families. Jason Kenney needs to go.
Barnes also says he would be open to the idea of returning to the UCP once a new leader is chosen. The U.S. State Department is cheering Canada's decision to ban 2 Chinese companies from its next-generation mobile networks. Innovation, Science and Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne announced the decision on Huawei and ZTE on Thursday.
Telecommunication companies in Canada will not be permitted to include in their networks products or services that put our national security at risk. Providers who already have this equipment installed will be required to cease its use and remove it under the plans we are announcing today.
The U.S., meanwhile, first began restricting domestic firms from doing business with Huawei back in 2019 and has been waiting for Canada to follow suit. Canada's Public Safety Minister, Marco Mendicino, says cybersecurity is an issue of national security and safeguarding our telecommunications networks is critical.
We will soon introduce a new framework to protect critical infrastructure in the finance, telecommunications, energy, and transport sectors. This new legislation will establish a framework to better protect the systems vital to our national security and give the government a new tool to respond to emerging cyber threats.
The Trudeau Liberals are looking at potentially implementing a $60 billion wealth tax on Canadians. Critics argue this new levy would inflict economic pain on not just the rich, but the poor as well. Franco Terrazzano is the federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and he joins us now from Ottawa to discuss this tax. So, Franco, how will this new wealth tax actually work?
This isn't a tax on income. This would be a tax on all of the assets that you may have if you have that many assets. And why that could be so damaging for someone who's right on the margins is that you may have to sell a part of your business, maybe a part of your farmland or machinery to have the cash to pay the tax. And remember, with the government that's more than $1 trillion in debt, we are worried that you're going to start seeing politicians in Ottawa tripping over themselves, looking for new ways to pay down their massive deficits, right? So we think the Trudeau government needs to be spending time studying ways to save money and attract investment, not studying new ways to overtax Canadians.
So how far-reaching would this wealth tax be for Canadians?
The government likes to say that it's only considering a tax on the rich, but these types of taxes are the Trojan horse of politics. They get the tax in the gates and then they expand it to cover more and more Canadians. We saw that play out in Canada with the income tax. When it was first brought in, only relatively few Canadians paid the tax because of its high exemptions. Now today, many, many Canadians pay the income tax. But we also saw this with wealth tax proposals from the federal NDP. When they first brought the proposal forward, they wanted the threshold to be $20 million. The very next election, they cut that threshold in half. But also in France, they stopped indexing the threshold with inflation, and more property owners got hit with the tax as inflation bumped up their asset values.
Okay, Franco, let's talk about France and their wealth tax in more detail. How well did it really work out for them?
Well, they ditched it. But it wasn't just France. You've got Austria, Denmark, Finland, Germany, Ireland, India, Netherlands, and Sweden. They all tried to wealth tax, but then they ditched it. One, it's a very complex type of tax, but two, it harms the size of the economic pie. In France, they lost out on about $300 billion of assets that fled, but then also tens of thousands of residents left France in part because high taxes chased them out. So this is a very damaging type of tax, and it's something that we have to stay on guard for.
Thanks so much, Franco. That was Franco Terrazzano, Federal Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, joining us from Ottawa. Finland is the latest country to be cut off from Russian energy for refusing to pay in rubles. The Nordic nation state-owned energy company says Russia will cut off its natural gas supply. Poland and Bulgaria were cut off last month, while Italy's energy company says that it's starting procedures to follow the Kremlin's demand. Officials in Finland say natural gas accounts for just 6% of Finland's total energy consumption, paling in comparison to 40% for Italy. Scientists who have monitored outbreaks of monkeypox in Africa say they're baffled by the disease's spread to North America and Europe. Cases of the virus have previously only been seen in people with links to Central and West Africa. But in the past week, Canada, the United States, and UK have all reported infections, mostly in young men who've not even traveled to Africa.
Right now, I would say just under a couple of dozen people under investigation by local authorities, mainly in Quebec, but a couple of contacts being followed up in British Columbia as well, but only 2 cases confirmed. There are samples under processing at the National Microbiology Lab as we speak, so we might expect to hear more confirmations in the upcoming hours and days.
Monkeypox is a virus similar to smallpox that causes fever, chills, muscle aches, and exhaustion, and is transmissible from animals to humans. A number of farmers and ranchers in our region have to be very happy with the moisture we've received recently. Jeanette Roche is in now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, the rain clouds, however, should be leaving us soon, and a warm weekend is shaping up.
Well, it will get warmer as we get closer to holiday Monday, absolutely. But overnight tonight, we're still hovering at that -2. So keep that in mind if you've already started planting flowers like we have at our house. Of course, that always happens. As we get into Saturday, not extremely warm, still hovering in the single digits there. Around 9 degrees is the high, but nice and sunny. For the rest of the weekend, we are going to start to get warmer temperatures up into the teens and even into the high 20s as we get into next week. And I will have all those details coming up for you later on in the show.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. One of the 4 men arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit murder related to the blockade at the Coutts border crossing in February had his bail hearing on Thursday. BCN's Naveen Day was in attendance. Now, Nav, this hearing was to determine if Chris Carbert was suitable for release?
That's right, Hal. Crown Prosecutor Matt Delitowitz submitted evidence heard by Justice Jonah Kubik. Now, I can't go into details of the evidence that was submitted due to a court-ordered publication ban, but the Crown argued that Chris Carbert was a leader in the blockade at Coutts and was heavily armed with an abundance of firearms, ammunition, and body armor, and was prepared to go to war with police and authorities. The Crown argued that Carbert may flee if he's released on bail due to a lack of respect for authorities. Pictures of the firearms found in 3 trailers were exhibited, as well as cell phone communications from wiretaps and messaging records, as well as testimony from undercover officers. Defense counsel Balfour Durr and Carbert's mother, Betty Carbert, responded to the Crown's arguments, stating that Chris did not actually have a plot to kill and that he is gullible, prone to puffery, and exaggerated his claims. During his mother's time on the witness stand, the defendant appeared emotional, and I saw him wiping tears from his face. Mrs. Carbert said that her son was inspired by his grandparents, who served in the Canadian military and was only interested in defending the freedoms of Canadians. The judge will deliver her decision on May 27th. Hal?
Thanks so much, Nav. A documentary is being produced on the Freedom Convoy, which took place in our nation's capital back in February. Now, the producers of the film, Jeremy Regato and Andrew Peloso, say it's important to show viewers exactly what transpired there. They say when the truckers rolled into Ottawa, they were really bringing a powerful message of unity.
We are not trying to make media that encourage viewers to think any which way. We're just trying to say that this happened. We were able to document so much of the movement, and we feel all Canadians, regardless of their view, need to know what happened in Ottawa for those 33 days.
Our call to the people watching this film is that we can come back to a middle ground where people can feel unified as citizens of Canada, as people of the world, and have hope that we can live in a society where we are free to disagree and still love each other.
Make sure you catch the full interview with the producers of Trucking for Freedom and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up in the second half of our newscast. Lethbridge residents are set to brave the shave on June the 2nd. Heads will be shaved to raise money for cancer patients, and a portion of the proceeds will go towards supporting a Canadian cancer charity. Video journalist Micah Quinn has the story.
We love the idea of a head shave because so many people with cancer, it's such a huge deal when you start going through chemo and radiation. Especially for women, I find when they lose their hair, it really takes something from you.
Shelby and Dylan Procey are hosting a head shave for cancer at the Canadian Brewhouse in Lethbridge. A ticket will buy you a steak dinner and the chance to witness a few noggins being shaved to raise money for the fight against the deadly disease. 8 years ago, Dylan shaved his head at a similar event, and his aunt, who was battling cancer at the time, was in attendance.
She saw me shave my head, and then afterwards, she said it was something brave to do. And she ended up losing her fight to cancer a couple years later. And then when that happened, I decided that I would do more than just shave my head. I'd grow my hair long enough so that when I cut it, there's enough to donate for a wig.
Dylan has been growing out his hair for 5 years, but he won't just be getting his head shaved. The beard will also be making its way to the floor.
The plan was just to shave our heads, and then we had a bunch of family members and stuff come up with kooky ideas of auctioning off what we'll look like when we're done. We auctioned off our facial hair last time, so this time, the beard's going to the highest bidder.
An estimated 2 in 5 Canadians will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime, and approximately 1 in 4 will die from the disease. A total of $7 from each ticket price will be donated to the Canadian Cancer Society.
Our hope is really that someday a cancer diagnosis isn't the scary word that it is today. That hopefully this funding can go towards prevention or a cure.
The fundraiser will take place at the Canadian Brewhouse on June 2nd in Lethbridge. For more information on the event, you can visit the fundraiser's Facebook page. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Helping out a great cause while enjoying some steak. You gotta love that. Former Lethbridge Hurricanes hockey players will be making their way to our city on May 27th. Now, the Canes are hosting a celebrity sports dinner. Mark Gregg and Kevin St. Jacques, who played with the Canes in the late 80s and early 90s, will both be in attendance. The players were inducted into the Wall of Honor earlier this year. They said it'll be exciting to get back to in-person events and see some of their former teammates.
Being in person is going to be great. Obviously, this is the first time I've seen Mark probably since his last year. I've watched the hockey and watch him play and never could get to a rink to get in there and rattle him behind the glass or something. But I'm stoked to get back there and meet the alumni, reminisce, because it was great time.
To get a chance to connect with those guys on a night that you're being inducted is a pretty cool experience. So I'm looking forward to seeing the guys too. And like I said, also a lot of the people in management, Pete Anholt and I are close. I feel fortunate that I'm going in under his kind of eye, and he's been such a good presence in the league, not only in Lethbridge but over the years. A little bit of a mentor for a lot of us in different regards. It makes it neat.
Greg is one of 9 players in team history to score 50 goals in a single season, and St. Jacques set the all-time franchise record with 65 goals in a season back in 91-92. Wow. Well, he's going to be taking us back to the summer of '69 when he returns to the NMAC Centre. Canadian rock icon Bryan Adams will be making a stop in Lethbridge November the 8th as part of his world tour. BCN's Angela Stewart sat down with the promoter of the event, who's bringing in this Canadian rock legend.
Selling out shows around the globe and millions of albums sold with hits like Summer of '69, Canadian rock legend Bryan Adams is coming back to southern Alberta.
The last tour in Lethbridge was 16 years ago.
Ron Sakamoto of Sakamoto Agency, the promoter of the show, says he and the rocker go way back.
His manager, Bruce Allen, and I have been friends for over 45 years. And he has Bryan Adams, Michael Bublé, and a number of other artists that he manages. Way back then, Bryan was just getting started. He was in a group before that called Sweeney Todd, and then he went on his own. And when he went on his own, that's when I first started promoting him.
The show, which is part of Adams' North American tour, all came to be through Sakamoto's partnership with the singer.
They got a hold of me and said, listen, how would you like to put Lethbridge on there? And I said, absolutely. I mean, we sold out 5,500 seats last time. Every time we brought him, he sold out.
2006 was the last time Adams made a stop to our city, and Sakamoto says they're hoping for the same turnout this time around.
Hopefully, the Southern Albertans will. I mean, we sold out 5,500 seats last time. Every time we brought him, he sold out. So the people, you know, they just love him.
Quite the record breaker, too. Adams' hit, Everything I Do It For You, holds the longest consecutive reign for #1 songs in chart history. Tickets for the show at the NMAC Centre go on sale June 3rd. For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
Should be an amazing concert. Well, it's been a year since the shocking discovery of an unmarked burial site at the former residential school in Kamloops, British Columbia. School survivor Gary Godfredson says he's torn about his next steps. Should he dig or leave the site undisturbed?
One side of me says, yeah, we should do that because we should settle this, you know, this issue about the scientific side of it, the legal side of it, the accountability side of it. But the other side of me says, like, let's just let it be. Let's let the souls of those kids rest and leave them alone.
South of the border, a church service was held Thursday night in Buffalo, New York, to honor the 10 victims of the deadly supermarket shooting.
It is a blessing to be with the members of my community as we face this difficult and dark time together. I want to just again, on behalf of the more than 278,000 residents of the city of Buffalo, extend our deepest condolences to the families of our precious community members that lost their lives in this racist attack on our community.
18-year-old Peyton Gendron of Conklin, New York, has been indicted by a grand jury on a charge of first-degree murder. Hundreds of climbers who scaled Mount Everest over the last few days have begun to make their way back down the mountain, including a mountain climber from Ukraine who has a powerful message for all of us.
My main message for the climb was to bring attention of all the countries and the government of countries to be aware that in Ukraine we have still war and Ukrainian people are still fighting for their freedom, for their future, and we need help from all the sides.
Really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? And that's one of my bucket lists as well, to climb Mount Everest. Well, we enjoyed a little more rain today across much of southwestern Alberta, but it appears as though the rain clouds will be leaving us, and just in time for the weekend. A full look at the weather picture is coming up. Farmers and ranchers have been celebrating the recent moisture we've had lately, but will it continue? Jeanette Rocher is in now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, it appears as though the rain clouds may be heading out just in time for the long weekend.
Yeah, should be a nice sunny one. Hell, we'll have a few clouds sticking around overnight, but after that, we should see nice clear skies. Those clear skies sticking around for most of the long weekend. Nice sunny days ahead. 9 degrees only the high for Saturday, but going to rise up to the teens for Sunday. 15 the high, and then on holiday Monday, 18 degrees the high. Back to 17 degrees on Tuesday with mainly cloudy skies. Wednesday, we're looking at a high of 22, and then look at that right there for Thursday, 28 degrees. Cannot wait for that. So yeah, we are definitely seeing a little bit of a roller coaster effect there. The average high for this time of year, 19 degrees. We're going to be lower than that and then quite a bit higher by the end of the week. Average low, 5 degrees. 29 was our high temperature on this day back in 1964, and in 1987, we had our chilliest on record, which was -3. Sun rose this morning at 5:40 a.m. and our sunset this evening, 9:16 p.m., giving us 15 hours and 36 minutes of daylight. So on the west coast tomorrow, we're looking at a mix of sun and cloud in Victoria, 19 degrees the high, 17 the high in Vancouver. Nice sunny skies there. Winds kicking around 20 kilometers per hour. 13 degrees in Edmonton with a mix of sun and cloud. Partly cloudy skies expected tomorrow in Calgary as well, with a high of 10 degrees. As we look to the rest of the prairies now, we're seeing a beautiful sunshiny day in Saskatoon tomorrow. 13 the high, 10 the high for Regina with a mix of sun and cloud. Looking at a 30% chance of showers tomorrow in Winnipeg with a high of 9 degrees. As we get to the middle part of the country, we're looking at Toronto tomorrow, seeing some showers there. 25 the high, looking at a chance of showers in Ottawa as well. Could see a risk of some thunderstorms there. 27 the high, 29 the high in Montreal tomorrow, looking at partly cloudy skies there. As we look to the east coast of Fredericton's high 18 degrees, 16 the high in Halifax under sunny skies. Sunshine expected tomorrow in Charlottetown. Beautiful 20 degrees there, 14 the high in St. John's, Newfoundland. Feeling warmer inland, lots of sunshine though. And that is your forecast for Saturday.
The group of 7 leading economies have agreed to provide $19.8 billion US in economic aid to Ukraine to ensure its finances do not hinder its ability to defend itself against Russia. German Finance Minister Christian Lindner says $9.5 billion of that was mobilized at meetings of the G7 finance ministers. Russia's invasion touched on almost every topic of the finance ministers' meetings, from the need to reduce Russian energy to reforming relationships between countries to maintain economic stability. The Mueller Irrigation Group out of Lethbridge College is spearheading a research project that will look at the best bedding practices for potato producers. Normally, farmers will use the late fall to produce and prep their potato bed for the upcoming spring, and this new project will test 3 different bedding formations with the hope that it will offer sustainable agriculture practices for farmers.
Our goal is just reduce the losses, the nutrients, and increase the nutrient use efficiency. Checking and testing the bedding preparation time. We have 3 different treatments: fall bedding preparation time, spring bedding preparation time that we had cover crop in winter, and another treatment is just a spring preparation time. We want to know that how these time can affect the nutrient use efficiency, and then later how these treatments can affect the yield, the potato yield.
And this project at Lethbridge College is believed to be the first of its kind here in Alberta. Way to go. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 15 points on the day to finish at 20,197. The Dow was up 8 points to 31,261. The S&P 500 was up a half a point to 3901, and the Nasdaq was down 33 points on the day to 11,354. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 102 to 113.23 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 22 cents to 808 US. Gold was up 465 to 1846.50 US an ounce, and silver was down 15 cents on the day to 2178 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $15.51 per bushel, barley's at $10.23, canola's at $26.69, and corn is at $12.19 per bushel. Live cattle were up 8 cents to $131.58. Feeder cattle were down 73 cents to $153.40. And lean hogs were up $3.56 to $108.88. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 77.88 US. Recapping one of our top stories, the United Conservative Party revealed that Jason Kenney will remain on as Alberta Premier until a new party leader has been chosen. There were calls for Kenney to immediately step down once he said he was resigning. Kenney made the announcement following the UCP leadership review, which only saw him garner 51.4% support by party members to remain on as the leader of the United Conservatives. A documentary is being produced dissecting what transpired during the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa last February. Coming up next, we shall have a chat with the producers of that documentary, Trucking for Freedom.
It's been 3 months since the Freedom Convoy and rally in our nation's capital, and there are 2 Calgarians who spent their time in Ottawa digitally documenting the events during that time. It's been made into a documentary, and the creators of that film, Jeremy Rigoto and Andrew Peloso, join me from Calgary to talk about their experiences in Ottawa and what people can expect from the film. Jeremy and Andrew, thanks so much for joining me today. Pleased to meet you.
It's pleased to meet you too. Thank you so much for having us here.
Thank you.
So thinking back to your February 2022 Freedom Rally experience, was it your intent to document the whole convoy and rally?
So yeah, originally it was our intent to document the rally, but it was we definitely got more than what we were expecting. Andrew called me pretty much the night before the convoy was going to start, and he said, "Hey, I got word of this group of trucks that's going to be driving across the country. Do you want to maybe film it? Could be pretty cinematic." I said, "Sure. Like, I guess I'm pretty busy, but okay, let's go ahead and film this thing." And it exploded. It became way bigger than either of us could have ever imagined. And it wasn't just us that filmed it. We ended up putting up a WeTransfer link, and all of Canada was sending us their footage from this event happening right across the country, right across the world, actually. It was happening all over the world. So it was always our intent, but we definitely got a whole lot more than we were asking for.
Yeah, it was definitely big news all over the world. Andrew, Jeremy mentioned that you reached out to him. Now, are you guys documentarians by trade, or what was the motive for doing this and for going there?
Yeah, we're both in the media and marketing industry. Prior to this, I'd been working on a documentary on cancel culture for about 3 years, and it's set to release this fall. However, I was taking a break. I was on vacation. It was my father who sent me this link about this bear hug, this convoy across Canada. And I just thought the prospect of that amount of vehicles on the road converging in on a city was probably a sight to behold, but I had no idea what we were planned for. Jeremy, we're business partners, and I called him really late at night and said, "Man, I think we need to go do this thing. What do you say?" And he was gracious enough to uproot his entire schedule, and we drove in this SUV together, and we just started documenting. The first day, we were coding a website in the car to show that we're going to make this film. And by the time we had launched it, we were getting 60,000 hits a day across Canada, with people uploading cell footage from different overpasses all over. So there was a real sense of camaraderie and of Canadian spirit all the way through the trail.
Yeah, it was pretty spectacular to watch. Now, did you actually drive to Ottawa with the convoy?
Yeah, that's correct. We did drive with the convoy all the way to Ottawa. We were following some of the organizers of the convoy. We were in and out of their vehicles. We were in and out of truckers' vehicles, doing interviews as we were driving across the country, trying to get ahead of the convoy, putting up drones, trying to capture that. It was days full. It was 23-hour days for a week straight as we drove across the country in pretty remarkable winter Canadian road conditions. So it was an adventure, to say the least.
unbelievable. That sounds like a lot of hard work. So what was your initial reaction when you first arrived in Ottawa?
Well, first initial reaction was we didn't know the evening prior to the beginning of the demonstration if we were even going to get into the city. There was so much, I guess, misinformation. It felt like people as well were a little paranoid because no one's getting sleep on the road. We thought potentially the military could be blockading Ottawa and we wouldn't be able to get in, but we were able to get in. My impression would be that, there's going to be a bunch of trucks down near Wellington Street, right by the Parliament. But I didn't realize the amount of foot traffic and amount of people that came into Ottawa for that first weekend. It felt, I don't have a final number, but it really felt like the population of Ottawa had doubled. And it was really beautiful because the heart of this movement, capturing it during the early days before we saw any government action, it was really just based around freedom and everyone's personal choice to make decisions for themselves and their family that they believe are decisions of conscience. And that was quite beautiful to see. It certainly gave me hope.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned, of course, you're talking about the beauty of people coming together, but of course there were a lot of points of contention with this convoy as well, and I guess the impact of that the convoy maybe had on the citizens of Ottawa. So what were your recollections of the interactions with locals while you were there?
Honestly, the truth is that we tried to find people that were upset about the Freedom Convoy being there. And there were a lot of people that were coming down to the like Wellington Street just to see what was going on because they were hearing about things on the news. And in general, I would say the majority of people came down expecting to be upset. Of Ottawa citizens came down expecting to be upset. And then realized what was actually going on, that the streets were clean, that there were bouncy castles, that it was like a parade. It was a celebration for Canada. It was like Canada Day on steroids. And then they were coming down every single opportunity they had. After work, they'd come down. They'd give out food. They'd give out cash. They'd try to their best to encourage. We tried to get as many people on camera as possible talking about their experiences, as many Ottawa citizens as possible talking about their experiences. We did get a few, but for the most part, people were afraid to talk on camera, not because they were afraid to share their feelings, but because they were afraid of who might see it, whether their employer might see it or their family members might see it, or like people are genuinely afraid of what's going on right now and afraid for their own security, afraid for their own employment. And that's honestly one of the reasons why we are doing what we're doing, is because we have to normalize and chase away this fear of a difference of opinion and freedom of thought and speech. So that's the honest truth, is we were looking very hard for people that were upset. There were a few people that we talked to that said like it was pretty noisy the first couple of days, but then the truck stopped honking and we didn't really even notice. We asked people if they were having difficulty getting around downtown. And sure, there were a couple streets that were had a lot of vehicles on them, but not one street was completely blocked off. There was always a lane open for emergency vehicles or for travel. We drove in and out of downtown quite a bit. We had no issues. Google was really accurate. There was no extension in time getting around. So that's the honest truth, is there was nobody that we encountered that was over the top upset. There were a couple anti-protesters that we saw with signs and stuff like that. We tried to get interviews. Those people wouldn't talk on camera, which is unfortunate. But we did get a little bit. So we're excited to get into those chapters later on in the series and share their stories also.
Okay, so that part of it is included in your documentary as well?
Yeah, we're focused on a story of Canada that's unbiased and for everyone. We are not trying to make media that encourage viewers to think any which way. We're just trying to say that this happened. We were able to document so much of the movement, and we feel all Canadians, regardless of their view, need to know what happened in Ottawa for those 33 days.
And that's basically what you're trying to accomplish with this documentary.
You bet.
Okay, what's the name of the film?
So it's a docu-series. We decided to put it out as a docu-series because of the release schedule time. We didn't want to stay in editorial for a year and release it towards 2023. So it's a 6-part mini-series called Trucking for Freedom, and the website is truckingforfreedom.com. That's free to view for anyone. It's free to download for everyone, and you can post it anywhere. So we really received our mandate from the Canadian people, and we had people purchasing film credits where that's funding this production. And so as a result, we're able to give that and distribute it for free.
Okay, what are you hoping that viewers will take away from watching it?
Honestly, we're hoping that we can somewhat neutralize the extremes that we're experiencing in our society right now. You're either really right or you're really left, or you're one extreme or you're another extreme. And we feel like the society has done a half decent job at polarizing us and putting us at ends. Our call to the people watching this film is that we can come back to a middle ground where people can feel unified as citizens of Canada, as people of the world, and have hope that we can live in a society where we are free to disagree and still love each other. That's our hope for people that are watching this film.
Wow, and did you mention that Chapter 1, you've already got that completed?
Yeah, we released Chapter 1 this Sunday. Since releasing, it's been only a couple days, and we're getting close to over 3 million minutes streamed on our website, just organically. We haven't advertised this at all. So it's very evident that Canada, you can just see the map lighting up with different people and IP addresses watching this film. So we released Saturday the first chapter, which is how we got here, which served as a bit of a chronology of the last 2 years of policy and social implications and impacts of lockdowns that served as the fuel that caused this Freedom Convoy and respective movement to develop.
So far, what have been the reactions from people who have seen Chapter 1?
Oh, we've had nothing but positive feedback, honestly. We've been crawling social media. We've been, you should see our inbox. Our inbox is completely lit up. I haven't seen one negative response to what we put out there. And people are sharing it like wildfire. There's yes, absolutely that 3 million minutes that are viewed on our website, but the way that we posted this with that download feature, we were having different groups having live watch parties and streaming the show, and they have been for the past 3 days. So the amount of people that must have seen this already is huge, staggering numbers, more than we ever imagined when we first left Calgary and joined this convoy. So it's pretty remarkable.
Wow, that's actually really impressive. Now, I'm just curious, how involved was the rest of your family during the making of this film or during the time that you were gone? Did you have their support or were they against it?
Yeah, it's I guess I can answer first, but Jer has to answer that too. My family has been supportive. They believe that, all Canadians should be able to freely travel and socialize and assemble regardless of medical status or what our federal government thinks. And so they're quite supportive of this project. I have family as well and friends that are supportive of this regardless of their medical status, right? Because I think it gets at something way deeper than what some of the legacy media would like us all to believe. This is not a conversation about medicine. This is more of a conversation about freedom. And I think the majority of Canadians can all get behind wanting a free society. But Jeremy, over to you, man.
Yeah, my family's been incredibly supportive the whole time. All the way from the very first week when we uprooted our lives, they were taking on responsibilities that I had at home, and they aided with financially right off the bat with keeping this team on the road. They've always been supportive with anything that I've tried to do, but this especially, they feel like it's so incredibly important. And I have full support from my immediate family, extended family. There's some extended family that I would say I would go as far as some people even being disappointed with what we're doing. But that again is why we have to do this. Is to bring people back to a center ground where we can be a unified Canada again.
Interesting. Fantastic. It looks like we are out of time, but we could go on talking about this all day because it's such an interesting topic. But Jeremy and Andrew, thanks so much for joining me today. Really appreciate having you on.
Well, thank you so much, Jeanette.
Thank you.
That was Jeremy Rigoto and Andrew Palozzo, the creators of the Trucking for Freedom documentary. They are joining me from Calgary.
The Canadian economy continues to have its share of challenges with the ongoing uncertainties related to COVID. But it seems that overall, the residential real estate market has remained quite strong. Joining us now to talk a little real estate is Jeff Reimer. He's been a Lethbridge realtor for over 25 years with Royal LePage. Jeff, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Hey, nice to meet with you, Hal.
So Jeff, where are we at in Southern Alberta when it comes to the real estate market right now? Is it more of a seller's or a buyer's market?
Yeah, I would lean towards sellers right now. The inventory is lower than historically, which supply and demand just, leans it towards sellers. But it's not crazy, but it certainly would lean toward the sellers right now.
So how many listings would you say we actually have in Lethbridge right now? Let's say between 250 and maybe 350,000, approximately. Where are we at?
I know the inventory is down, though. We're looking at citywide. The inventory is down probably to just under 3 months of supply. That I do know for a stat.
How about the average home price right now in Lethbridge? Where are we at?
Yeah, that's risen. From 2020, it was close to about 300,000 for Lethbridge. And now that includes different genres of homes, not just single detached. And this year it ended up closer to 320-ish.
Wow, that's incredible. So what do you think is selling the fastest right now? Would it be the townhomes, the condos perhaps, not only for the first-time home buyers, but maybe also those who are thinking of downsizing?
Yeah, condos started the pandemic, just about 2 years ago as being hit maybe the hardest of types of homes because people were nervous about living in close quarters with others. And this year we've seen a good resurgence in the condominium and townhouse market. A little bit of getting back to school has also helped with the condominium and townhouse market. So the single family, though, had remained strong over the last 2 years, very strong.
Now, the older I get, the more I have a challenge when it comes to stairs. I know some of our viewers can relate to this as well. Would you say it's safe to say that maybe bungalows are becoming more popular as opposed to 2 stories, instead of having those 18 steps up and 17 steps down?
Yeah, yes and no. Certainly, yes, Lethbridge has an older population. It's kind of a retirement area for Southern Alberta because it's, closer to the border. It's warmer here than in Calgary, Edmonton, for sure. So yeah, bungalows do stay strong in that respect. But with the land prices going up and developers tending to make smaller lots, the general trend is more 2 stories actually. So it's kind of a weird trend because of the cost of land, right? And you see it in bigger centers even more, but Lethbridge, you still have a lot more choice. But yeah, the 2 stories are still doing quite well.
Have you noticed over the years as well, because you've been a realtor for close to 30 years now, like you said, the lot prices have gone through the roof. I remember when I was a kid growing up in a bi-level or a bungalow, we had a huge lot. It would take us maybe an hour and a half to mow the lawn. But now with some of these 2 stories that they're building, they're like on postage stamp lots. You can almost reach out of your bedroom window and touch your neighbor's house.
Yeah, it's certainly changed, right? And busier lifestyles it's weird, but I believe lifestyles are more busier now than they used to be. Less gardening, more people doing the grocery store than doing gardens. I mean, is a factor of that doing in the lot sizes, but you can still go to the communities just outside of Lethbridge and get bigger lot sizes, like for Coaldale or Colehurst or Nobleford. Yeah, you can still get good lot sizes though in southern Alberta, which is nice.
Maybe with some of the grocery prices going through the roof right now, maybe people will consider getting the bigger lots and going back to gardening. Try and save some money that way.
Absolutely. My wife made me clean up the yard. She wants to put some raised flower beds in this year. And I think that's a bit of a trend. You see people doing more of that so they can control what they're eating. They're not concerned about, additives. They can grow their own stuff, have it fresh. And yeah, it's definitely, we're seeing a bit more of that for sure. And it's good, healthy lifestyles. So.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, a vegetable garden is good. And the flowers add a little bit of color, helps pick up our spirits. Bring up our spirits a little bit. Now, there's certain areas of Lethbridge, Jeff, that tend to be more popular for buyers than others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it depends where you're at. All areas of Lethbridge have their pros. The west side's developing more just because there's more land available there, and the infrastructure's growing. The north side really did well with the implementation of that new park there up by Legacy. That's really helped them. And the south side is always, the commercial hub and close to the airport. And, for folks going south, that's always a prime area. There's just not as many areas to expand in the south. So, the demand is still strong in all three areas of Lethbridge.
I've been chatting with the mayor and some other city officials as well about the potential of maybe Walmart going into the west side. I talked to a lot of people who live on the west side, and they're begging for either Walmart or even a Canadian Tire. What have you been hearing?
Well, I don't have any privy information, but I do know that talk of a third bridge, if that could be years and years away. But specifically, I don't have news on that, but it's still a short drive. I live on the west side and I zip across that bridge in a few minutes and I can get downtown in 5 minutes from my house almost. So, Lethbridge is still a really accessible community from all areas. It doesn't take you long. You can get from one end to the other in about half an hour, no problem. And that's a real plus when you're considering communities to move to.
So, Jeff, are people still hesitant about viewing homes during the pandemic, or are they pretty used to that now?
More used to it. I mean, it's still a concern, but the sales would indicate that we've done well of working through that. People are a little bit more at ease, certainly, than they were a year ago. But we still like to take precautions and wear masks and sanitize and be careful. But no, generally, it's been good, and we've worked through it, and the sales have reflected that that's been overcome.
How about open houses? Is that still a good way for you to potentially get leads or show people what the house looks like that's on the market?
It is an option. It's less of an option. People are more comfortable viewing initially on their computer and looking at virtual tours, but it still can be a good tool. I mean, nothing's different than going into a house and seeing and smelling and feeling the perspective that you don't quite get from a camera, and then standing out and looking around at the areas and how the rooms reflect and light reflects. And, you still need to go into a house to get the true feel of it.
Now, we've seen some record low interest rates. Do you think this trend will continue, or with inflation, are mortgage rates likely to start going up?
Yeah, I'm not an economist, but certainly the rates have been great. That's been part of the stimulation of our market. And Lethbridge is a conservative money town, I think. And so the lower interest rates has helped boost Lethbridge as well. And I think that there's pressure to slow down inflation for sure. So they're saying they're going to raise interest rates, and they were, they moved a few here this week, a little bit up. But, I don't think they're going to do too much. When I talk to my banker friends there, they're suspecting that they will rise somewhat, but they're still going to be reasonably low. I remember when I bought my first house, I locked in for 7 years. I was stoked I could get it at 7.625. So I locked it in for 7 years, I think it was. And now, I mean, the rates are still incredibly low, and that's going to keep the market, I think, moving fine.
You know, you're right. I remember when I first bought our first home too, it was 80 to 90% of the payment that I would make would go towards the interest. But now it's almost like 50-50. You know, that's what's amazing. Not only are you building equity, but at the same time, you're paying down your house. Now, Jeff, do you think a variable rate mortgage is still a good option in our current market?
Yeah, I think variable rates are still good. When I speak with some of my friends that study this stuff regularly for a living, you know, if you take an example of what a variable rate would be over the last, let's say, 25 years, my friend Rick always says this. He says, and you look and then you take a 5-year rate and you work it backwards, you know, you're still going to generally be ahead going with the variable. The challenge is it's just slightly more risk. But if you're not over leveraged and your debt load isn't too high, I think there's still a good argument for doing the variable. But if you want to lock in right now, it's not bad because they are probably going to inch up. So if you want to make sure your rate's secure and set for 5 years, it's not, but you know, I definitely recommend talk to your mortgage broker, ask their opinion, then consult with your family. Still use the wisdom of friends and family that have gone through, you know, more than just 10 years of life in the business world, and get their opinions on it. Ask family, ask friends, and talk with your mortgage broker before you make that decision, instead of just doing what you think is best.
Jeff, let's talk about how property values increase here in Lethbridge compared to some other markets. Like Toronto can go through the roof, Vancouver, even Calgary a number of years ago. We sold our house for $198. 4 years later, it went up to over $500,000. You really don't see that here in Lethbridge. So would you say it's more of a slow, steady incline, like maybe 2 or 2.5% each year? How do you see it?
Yeah, well, it sure started like that when I started 29 years ago. But you know, some of these old timers would say, "Oh yeah, just every year add on 2%," and you certainly can't do that anymore. In 2005, 6, and 7, it almost doubled house prices. You know, then we hit a peak there in Lethbridge around August of 2007, and then they went down a little bit, but we've regained that loss back. So I would say, you know, right now it's the highest prices we've seen in my career in Lethbridge, and you know, it's a combination of things, though. Lethbridge always was a good value for a town, but these big centers like in BC and in Toronto, when they can cash in and sell a townhouse for 7, 8, 900,000, and then move to Lethbridge, buy a big beautiful house for 400,000 or 500,000, and then put some extra money aside or completely eliminate any debt and have a little nest egg, it's enticing. So we're finding right now, especially, that we're seeing more people move from BC and from the east, and taking advantage of the reasonable cost of living here and the lower house prices for sure.
But does the Lethbridge wind blow them back to BC?
Yeah, well, it's always a try. Who doesn't want to go to the mountains? But we have mountains in Alberta too, and we're only an hour and a bit from the mountains here in Lethbridge. That's what I love about it. You know, we get the nice fresh air blowing in from BC, but we also get the milder temperatures. I still think it's one of the best places to live in the country.
How well are some of the bedroom communities around our city doing, like maybe Raymond, Coaldale, and Nobleford?
Yeah, they're doing quite well. Very few houses available in Nobleford. Coaldale's a hot little market. It's hard to find too much property there right now. Supply and demand there is keeping that market very strong. And Raymond as well. Raymond had a good year. Maybe in the last couple months calmed a little bit, but very strong over the year, just like Lethbridge. Yeah, maybe even more so in some of those towns.
So Jeff, let's talk a bit about the stress tests and the tougher mortgage requirements. Can you explain how they work?
Yeah, basically they just wanted to keep the debt load down of Canadians. They were concerned about how much debt load they were having compared to what they should be able to handle in their opinion. And, you know, trying to calm the house prices in the larger centers. It really was needed more so in Vancouver and Toronto, for example. We really didn't need that here in Lethbridge. When it implemented, we thought, well, in theory that could be good, but we just don't need that here in Lethbridge. We're pretty calm and stable here. So yeah, they implemented it there, but we really didn't need it here in Lethbridge, in my opinion, whatsoever.
So Jeff, what advice would you give to a young couple trying to save up for a down payment to buy their first home? What sorts of things do they have to put together financially before they're ready to make an offer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that stress test factors into how they qualify. So they should get their down payment ready, so save up. You have to have a stable job. So before you make any life changes, maybe talk to your mortgage broker or your banker and say, I might be wanting to buy a house in the next year or two before you make a decision to change a job or maybe lease a vehicle, because it's going to affect your debt load. And that stress test we mentioned, basically it takes the current rates and it adds 2% or defaults to 5.25%. And basically it just qualifies you a little bit higher than what you're paying, so that if rates go up, you're not right away defaulting and losing your house. So it is a good thing in theory, but for a first-time home buyer, it's important to just go meet with your mortgage broker, get pre-approved, kind of understand that what it is to understand your gross debt service ratio and your total debt service ratio, what the bank's going to want to see for your amount of income, that you're at a stable job for a period of time. They're going to check your credit. So make sure that you maybe do a little research with your banker ahead of time, so that if all of a sudden you say, oh, I didn't make that payment like 2 years ago, that you can get that rectified sooner, get that cleared off your credit. And then you can strategize with your broker as to how the best way to go forward will be.
Jeff, we only have a couple of moments left here, but I want to ask you about empty nesters. Are you seeing more who are downsizing here in southwestern Alberta?
Yeah, I guess that's always a factor when house prices go up. It's easier for them to sell and move into something smaller. I don't know if much more than before, but it's a good part about Lethbridge is we have good options. There's the new big building getting on Scenic that's going to take out some of the supply up, and there's always been a need in Lethbridge for good retirement housing. But as far as seeing more or not, I don't know, a lot more farmers have trended to sell their larger farms or sell their smaller farms into larger farms. And that retirement rural community has moved into Lethbridge and kept the demand strong. And that's an ongoing thing for Lethbridge. We're a nice retirement center for anyone in Alberta.
Yeah, plus we have lots of students here as well with the college and the university. Jeff Reimer, a Lethbridge realtor with Royal LePage for close to 30 years. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks. Nice chatting with you, Hal. Have a good day.
You as well. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks for watching.